Hello. This is going to be a video of explanation of how to utilize the live stream function of Facebook in order to sing together in real time and also to build a four-part harmony with that. I'm hoping that this will also be used potentially by other musicians in other ways, but right now that's what we are doing, building a four-part harmony while being able to sing in real time with the people that we already are singing with. I'm going to be kind of reading from my notes for a lot of this because it's a very complicated issue. Not that the technology is very complicated, but that there are a lot of intricacies to making it successful and enjoyable for all. And so the notes will be very helpful to me. So forgive me if I am looking down a lot of the time. So if that first sentence about using Facebook Live to stream the four-part harmony was already intimidating for you, don't worry. I'm going to be going through everything in a lot of detail. I really hope to lay out the entire process in as clear and organized and detailed way as I can. That being said, I really do have these extensive notes that are a couple days away from being a document that can be shared as well, and then used as a reference. So there's going to be lots of support, hopefully, if you're feeling intimidated by some of the tech language. Before I go any further, I really want to say that this is not my idea. This whole concept did not come from me and probably would never have come from me. My dear friend Emily Ross, in all of her bravery and intelligence, was the first to have this idea and just make it happen. And I've been in the mix from day one, but like I said, this is not something that I would have thought of on my own or would have been brave enough to just do on my own either. But she did, and she was. So many, many thanks go out to Emily Ross. Okay, so I'm hopefully going to be explaining this in a way that will be accessible to both the community of singers who sing in this Sacred Harp tradition and to musicians everywhere who are just longing to sing and play with each other right now, especially, I think. So as I go deeper into the explanations, my tips and terminology may become more specific to the American tradition that we're doing, but I believe that the tips will still apply to others. So stick around if you're interested, even if some of the language is a little too specific. Okay, so I also want to be really clear that there are two different ways to be enjoying this whole process that some of you have been seeing us go through. One is to participate as someone who is actually live streaming audio and video of themselves and to be part of that quartet that is being formed and broadcast so others can use it to sing and play along with. But the other way is really just to listen to what we're doing and sing with us. So you don't have to have any kind of complicated device set up or videos of you singing out there on the internet. You don't even have to participate in the conversation in it. You can just sing along in your own home. There will be no video taken of you. There are many, many steps that we have to go through to get the video rolling. So don't be afraid that just because you're participating, all of a sudden you're going to be on Facebook like we have been. Okay, so let's see. So you can sing along from wherever you live, and if you'd like to, you can send in comments. You can, if you're live, you can send in comments. Sorry, let me rephrase that. If we are live, you can send in comments and feedback and requests of songs and things like that and participate in that manner. But you can also either not do that, not send in comments and feedbacks, that's fine, or you can also listen to the videos later when they're no longer live and happening right now. They're around Still, many people have kept them posted on their pages and kept them as public because people are going back and listening to them and enjoying them and singing with them days later even. So do not hesitate to do any of those things. There's really a wide range of ways to participate in this. Okay, so if that's enough for you, you know how to participate in the way that you want to, go ahead and turn me off right now. That's fine, and just sing along. If you're interested in learning more, clear your schedule because I've got a lot of notes. So, but I will also say, kind of in that vein, that this has been a pretty interesting and very surprising process for me. And I wouldn't have thought that it would be as deeply satisfying and connecting and grounding as it has been. I am a Waldorf teacher by nature, and here I am sitting surrounded by several devices and streaming my face on video on Facebook, and so this is not entirely my go-to area of expertise, but it just worked for me in a way that brought me a lot of joy, and I know others as well. So I wanted to just say that if you're interested in trying it out, you might surprise yourself in the same way as I surprised myself with it. So this is, of course, not a finished and complete idea. Okay, the very first time that we tried this was exactly 1 week ago, and since then we've had lots and lots of experiments, and some are more successful than others, and others we don't really want to revisit too much, but it's all interesting and it's all part of a process. So I have chosen actually to leave all the videos up that I've made, and just to learn from them and be able to revisit moments, because there are special moments in all of them for me that I've seen. So but that being said, I have no doubt that there are far better ways to do this, and I'm hoping that this is just a jumping off point for all of the brilliant musicians out there who are longing to play or sing with somebody, and can think of much better ways to do this. So one way to help develop that will be to share this idea, share the video or share the document that I'll be putting up in a couple days, and just get it out there so that people can start thinking and troubleshooting on their own and figuring out how to make it work for them for whatever setting they're trying to use it for. So definitely, feel free to share it with your musician friends, with any groups that you're a part of that it would be of interest to, any choral groups. I'm not sure how well it will work for any group in particular, but I'm just presenting how it's worked for our group and our kind of singing. So yeah, it would just be a wonderful thing for people to be able to play and sing with each other in real time these days. So the last note before starting is that I want to ask you to please excuse my teacher voice if it goes too deeply into teacherness. Most of the time that I've spent with humans lately, and it has been over a screen, are with the small variety of 3rd and 4th grader humans. So I am very sure that I will lapse into that more or less as it goes on, and it's not claiming that any of this is good or finished or the right way to do things. It's just all still ideas. Okay, so, and things and observations. A lot of it's just observations that I've seen along the way and found really interesting. Okay, ready to do this? That was just the intro. All right. So one question that a lot of people have had is, well, yeah, but doesn't Zoom do that, or Google Meet, or all these other different platforms that are for group meetings and talking to each other? And the answer is Zoom and Google Meet and all those platforms that are bringing people together in groups right now They do not work for musicians. If you have seen videos online these days of musicians with each having their little headshot on the screen and singing together or playing together, those are composite videos. I think, unless they are far more brilliant than we are, which yeah, they probably are, but those are really composite videos, meaning that each one of those people took a video of themselves doing what they were doing and sent it in, and some videographer put it together and mixed the sound and made it work musically. The reason that these different platforms don't work for musicians is that there is a very slight lag in the time that I say something and the person receives that sound. So when we're talking, it doesn't matter that much because conversation has lots of pauses in it, and it's not all about very intricate, detailed timing and being together. Music is. So even a very slight lag means that music is impossible or nearly impossible through those platforms, at least not the kind of music that we're trying to achieve. So that's kind of the simple answer for that, why we can't use those platforms. And so we're trying this kind of very different idea, which is using a platform that is not about getting people together in groups so that they can be together. That's not really the purpose of Facebook Live, although there are functions to bring in guests to your live feed. But again, that's not the primary function, so we're kind of hacking the system a little bit, I think. Okay, so why even try this? Why is it so important to us right now? This is really something that has been of a lot of importance to many people over the last week, and there are a variety of reasons for that. One is that this community in particular, this singing group and this singing style, it's not just about the music. The music is really really special and really deep, and it holds us together, but this kind of community, it goes a lot deeper than that, and it really has to do with connecting with others. We're not a choir that's preparing for a performance. We're not trying to fine-tune lots of little details that then we will be able to present. This is just a community that's really abruptly lost its primary way of connecting with each other. And because it's such a strong community, it's been felt especially strongly by many people. Just a tiny bit of background to say the names again of what I'm doing and what we're doing here. This is a style of singing called either sacred harp or shape note singing. It is a non-denominational style of singing and community, though the words and the origin of many of the songs are very religious in nature. But what is happening today in the world is non-denominational and very inclusive. And it is trying to be more and more inclusive in its wording all the time. So, and it was really, well, I am not a history expert on this, so that's the big disclaimer, but my understanding is that it was created in part in the 17 and 1800s in America, as America was being settled, to teach singing to different settlements that didn't have musicians or instruments or any ability to access that kind of experience. So it kind of has its base really in communities, and communities that maybe had a little bit of isolation at play as well during those times. The reason it is sometimes called shape notes is, shape note singing, oh, I meant to have this out, we'll see if I can find it, is that the musical notation is slightly different than, there it is, than regular classical music notation. in that the note heads they actually take on different shapes. So the note heads can be written in, or are written in, these different shapes, and not just all round notes like we're used to seeing if you're a classical musician or musician. So that was developed along with a modified solfege to go with them. That was developed back then to facilitate intervallic singing and sight singing, and to teach people how to sing. It's kind of like it ends up being a mnemonic that kind of hacks your brain and allows you, it taught me how to sight sing, and I've been singing for many years before I found out about this. So it really shifted my understanding of music and my understanding of my own voice. And that, among many reasons, is one of the reasons I find it so fascinating as a musician. It is also complicated 4-part harmony that is never accompanied, and it's often very fast, and it has a distinct sound to it that appeals to many and also really doesn't appeal to many. So if you are interested in knowing more about that, you can search just sacred harp or shape note, and that's harp with a P, not heart. That is thought to refer to the voice as the sacred harp. So, okay. Another significant part of this idea is the idea of kind of being seen and heard by others, and hearing and seeing others in real time while forming this whole sound. It's this beautiful balance between being an individual who's being noticed, noticing other individuals, and coming together to form a whole as well. That is my interpretation of part of it. So, but I do value that a lot, and I think that I see others valuing that, especially as we're coming together and trying this out during this time. So yeah, one of the parts that I've found really powerful in my experience with this tradition is being able to see the faces of the people that I love and sing with them at the same time. It's not just about the music, it's not just about getting the notes right, although that is really fun. But it's really about the people that I've formed connections with, and what happens between us when we sing together. So this method is not going to allow you to sing as a full class, which is what the kind of groups are called as we come together. But you can see some people and communicate with many people as it's happening in various ways, and that makes it very special. Okay, so kind of going off of that, one reason that you might want to start this on your own rather than just piggybacking off of the ones that we're doing is that I'm singing with the people that I know and love, and that's bringing me great joy. And we do love to sing with strangers, to come together in big conventions and sing with people that you've never seen before and make connections that way. But you might like to start this on your own so that you can be looking at and singing with the people that you know and love, and the voices that you know too. That actually has quite an impact on how well this works. It's not impossible if you don't know the people, but if you know the people and their style and what is likely to happen in a song, what the tempo is likely to be, then it can help bring the experience together for everyone. So I encourage you to do both. Sing with strangers that you've never seen who are just doing a live feed, see what their style is like, and maybe start one of your own and with your own home group. One of the things about Sacred Harp is that while it originated on the East Coast, the northern East Coast of America, of the United States, and then migrated down to the South where it was sustained, it was not sustained in the North, it was revived in the North later. but because of that, there are many groups all over the country, all over the world, that have their kind of own home groups that do this. So just like you have your band that you play with, So for those reasons, I really encourage you to give a try and do both, or find somebody in your community that you feel would be a good candidate for starting this kind of thing, and show them this and ask them what they think. Yeah. So let's see. Okay. Oh, I have a section titled Why Not To. I've written these notes over several days, so some of this is a little surprising to me. Why not to? I understand that this will not appeal to everyone, right? The idea of going live on Facebook can be kind of scary, right? I'd never done it before last week, last Thursday. And I was super self-conscious and nervous and scared about the whole thing. And what I found was that, for me at least, the enjoyment of the entire thing just totally washed away all of those, well, maybe not all, but so much of that kind of self-conscious, nervous reaction to the idea of being seen by others on camera, kind of. Even though when you're in it, it really just feels more like you are back at a singing. So let's see, some other ways that I kind of worked through those things. Hearing and knowing that it brought really a lot of joy to people, and relief. People are really missing music and being together with people, and knowing that even that, like the first dry run that we did, it was totally unplanned and unscheduled, and we didn't have anything about how it was done or any plan whatsoever. Even that first singing brought a lot of joy and relief, like I said, to many people who are still kind of going back and maybe watching some. And so knowing that, at least for me, really helped me put aside my own personal ego of wanting to be perfect and wanting to be doing things the right way, etc. So I'm not saying that this will work for you, but that is those are some of the thought processes that went on inside of me as I worked through those things. And an inherent part, I think, of Sacred Heart music, and I wish it were an inherent part of much more music. I say that as a classically trained pianist. Is that mistakes are 100% a part of this. And there are so many songs. There are lots of big books like that with 500 songs per book, that you're not going to know all of them. There are people who get close to that for sure. But many singers in this tradition do not know these songs, all of them. And that's where the sight singing comes in too, is that when somebody calls a song and decides to lead a certain song, you may not have ever seen it in your life. But because you are part of a group, and because the nature of the group is to move forward through mistakes rather than to go back and correct and find out how to do things better, then it seems natural that mistakes would be a part of this process too. One of the glorious things about these songs is that they often have 5 or 6 verses, and if you completely botch the first 2 verses, you still have 3 more tries. And there's rarely any time where we go back and analyze or try to fix things. It's always just moving on, and the next time that song comes up, you'll know it better then. So that has been helpful for me too, because these have been a train wreck, to be honest, sometimes. But again, we're just moving forward. Okay, so let's get down to some of the actual stuff. What is Facebook Live? And again, I'm trying to do this as simply as possible. I understand that I will leave things out as well, or that it may be too simple for some people, but I'm trying to do a broad overview. So what is Facebook Live? Facebook Live, or the live feature of Facebook, is a way to post videos on Facebook using the camera of your device that are live streaming, that are in real time. So it's not a video that we record ahead of time and then post later. It's you press the button and it's happening now. When we use it for this, we make that video of us singing. Okay, so it's the camera is trained on your face as you are singing through in a way that can see both your face and your hands or arms, hopefully, because that communicates a lot. And I'll go into all of that more later. This is still a little bit of overview. One of the things that might deter people from doing this is thinking that their post has to be public or it has to be seen by a lot of people. There are many ways to control the privacy of your Facebook Live feed. You can make a Facebook Live feed that nobody else is ever going to see. You can set the privacy setting to private or only me, and it's never going to be seen by anybody else. You can make the privacy setting to be your friends only. You can make the privacy setting to be only a specific subset of your friends, or you can make it public. There are lots of different variations. So if that's one of the things that is bothering you, know that you are really in control of who sees your video and who sees your Facebook feed. And I will go into that more about how to do that as we get into the details. You can also delete your video immediately after it's done. You don't even have to post it up to your profile. You can just hit the delete button once you're done, and that's that. Again, the reason I'm not doing that is that I think it's really a fascinating learning process, and I think that there are potentially even anthropological uses for our interest in what we're doing right now, which is connecting, trying to find something that really helped a lot of us throughout our kind of normal lives, and trying to find it again and piece it back together and finding joy out of that. Okay, so let's see. If you're interested in learning more about that from the videos, and you're finding this because you're a Facebook friend of mine or you're part of a group, you can go into my profile and see all of the videos from the start, from last Thursday, and today is April 9th. And if you're really interested, you go back and play them. They're all public, and just see how we started, what it sounded like when we started, how we started to troubleshoot things, all the different kind of setups and experimental things we did with them. So that's just a bit of information that's still there. So again, if you decide to do this, I encourage you really to not to delete your video, to save it. Maybe saving it, if you prefer not to be seen, you could save it so only you have access to it. Again, you can change that privacy setting before you start the video and after you end the video. So just a little word of encouragement, that I think that these are of value, even if they are not perfect, and even if you don't want anybody else seeing them. But that's a very that's something that's coming just from me, not from the community at large. If you, let's see, nope, I went over that. Next page. Okay, so I'm going to go a little bit more in depth into the concept of what we're doing and how it starts to work. This is not going to be the exact details of how to do it, but hopefully it will give people who are confused about the general idea of it all, because it's this odd inception-like thing that's happening. Hopefully it will give you a better picture of what it'll look like, or of what's happening rather. So let's see. So it's almost like a little game of telephone, right? Except, well, in that we're trying to pass along a message, and that message is our voice, and we're trying to do it so that it doesn't get garbled along the way. And the thing that maybe is different is that we are trying to pass along and add to each one. So one person is starting their Facebook feed, their live Facebook feed. Another person is adding theirs on top, their voice as well, so that you come up with two voices there. Another one then adds on top of that, so then you hear three voices, and then another one adds on top of that. So if you are listening to the fourth person's stream, you will actually be able to hear all four voices that are singing almost really in real time, almost live together. I'll go into that almost bit later. But the experience is really of singing it together and live. Right. So we are trying to use this platform to build up a chorus of four voices, at least at this stage. It's four voices because this is 4-part harmony, and we're trying to cover all the parts, and we're trying to sing live. Right. Okay. How do we do this? So here goes the process. And again, I'm going to start general and then go really detailed, hopefully, in a way that will make sense to people. And this is, let's see, this is still not the technology section. This is kind of a more of a wrap your head around how to do this. So, person one. Person one begins a live stream, a live feed, and sings. This person is in charge of a lot. So this person is not going to be able to hear anybody else that joins them, which sounds kind of sad, but it's a really interesting experience all on its own. But it has a lot of details that go into it. So because this person can't hear anybody else and they are starting this, they are in charge of all the pitching and all the tempos and really keeping the time in a way that is very different from when it's real life, because they can't hear the other parts coming in and they don't have that harmonic structure to work with. So this person, we're going to leave it there for now. I'll come back to it. This person only needs one device. Okay, if you have a phone or a tablet or a computer, one of those, put it right in front of you, start a live feed, and you're off and running. Okay, so that's the easy part of person one's job. Person two. This person needs two devices. As of right now, we're kind of experimenting how it might be done on one computer, but as of right now, the most successful way is that this person has two devices. So that could be a mixture of tablets, phones, or computers. On one device, person two will be watching person one. So that's one device. Okay, they're going to be listening to person one, and hopefully they're going to be playing that person's sound really quite loud so that it matches their voice. Because this tradition is also a very strong-voiced tradition. It's not about a lot of delicate nuance in dynamics. It's more about finding a big harmony with one another. So that first device can be playing quite loud to match your own voice. You will need a second device too. On this device, you are going to be streaming yourself singing. So that device is the one that's going to be directed right at your face, just like my camera is now, and will be showing what you're doing. So I'll tell you how to do that, but basically that device needs to be stable and pointed at you. It will pick up the sound of both your voice and the sound of the first person's voice coming through your other device. So maybe I'll just lay that out one more time because I got a little convoluted in there. Person number two needs two devices. One device will be picking up the live stream that has already been started from person 1 and blasting the audio. Device number 2 will be directed at you and broadcasting you and the audio from the other person. Okay. Persons 3 and 4, because again we're doing this in 4-part harmony. It may go past that, but we just don't know right now. You figure it out. So persons 3 and 4, your setup is the same as person number 2. The main difference is that the voices of the first people will degrade in quality and often volume. So it's important for everybody to ask their viewers, ask the people who are watching them live, to give them feedback on how the balance between the voices is. Because you can control that down the line with adjusting the volume of the speaker or the device that you're projecting the sound with, or adjusting the volume of your own voice. But that's less desirable because we like to sing loud. And I will provide plenty of ways to troubleshoot the balance between the voices coming up. But basically, persons 3 and 4, your setup is just the same as person number 2. It is good to remember that person number 1 can hear no one, and they have the most difficult task in many ways, right? So to communicate with person number 1, they can't hear you. So, and it is really helpful to be able to communicate with them. So you can't just speak out loud and assume they'll hear you, even though you can hear everything that they're saying. You have to type it in the comments of their feed, or send it in a private message or text, or or a group text between the 4 of you, perhaps. Something like that, in order to get your message and your feedback and the feedback of your commenters to the first person. So it's a little bit of a loop-to-loop system to get there. Okay. Person number 2. Remember that your voice carries to person 3 and 4, but not to person number 1. Okay, so anything that you said will always be heard by the people following you, but never be heard by the people behind you in line. Okay, so again, person number 3, your voice carries to person number 4, but not to people 1 and 2. Okay, and person number 4, your voice does not carry to anybody except your audience, and your voice is joined with the other 3 voices there. So person number 4, nobody else in the chain is hearing your voice, but plenty of people watching will, hopefully. Okay, so again, for people who are later in the chain, they have to comment, text, or message the people before them in order to communicate details. We found it most helpful to have a group chat between the 4 going, and to set it up ahead of time, so we didn't have to worry about that. Comments on the first person's feed can also be very effective if you want to request a change or something, because there's a way to make those just pop up on your feed as you're looking at the screen, even if you're singing. So that's the general setup. We encourage viewers to be watching the feed of person number 4, because that's the complete harmony. That's going to be the feed with all the voices accumulated on it. But it is actually fascinating to kind of jump between the 2 and stop watching number 4s and go to number 2 and see what it's like for them, and go to number 1 and hear what it's like for them, because they are vastly different experiences, all enjoyable in their own way. I've been at every position in the line, I believe. So yes, we encourage people to be on the last person's feed, but do hop around if you feel like it. Okay, ready for the how-to, the real how-to of the technology? Let's do it. So you need 2 things, basically. You need decent internet connection, and you need 2 devices unless you're person number 1. Might be helpful to have a microphone. I don't know. I don't have one. I hope to get one soon. So that could help carry the voices clearly, as microphones are supposed to do. Or headphones. I don't know. I haven't used headphones, and I'm not inclined to, because it feels much less natural. It feels much less like a real sing using headphones, and that's just why I haven't chosen to. So fool around with that, see what kind of microphones and headphones really help this process. These instructions are not specific to iOS, Mac, or Mac products or Android. I don't know all the very detailed differences between the two, so I'm trying to make it pretty general so it'll work on both kinds of device. Okay, so here are the steps for person number 1. This person needs to go into Facebook and find the place that will be either on your timeline, kind of at the top of your timeline where you post something, or often you can find it on your profile, wherever you go to post whatever you normally post, a picture, a comment, or a thought, or something like that, an article. Wherever you go to post, usually go there and click in the section where you are supposed to type something. Or if you already see live, click on live. You are looking for the word live or live video, okay? Once you find that, there are different options in that category that you might see, like post a photo, check in somewhere, all those kinds of things. So in that list, if you're seeing that, you'll see a live or a live video option. That's what you want to click. Don't worry, once you click on it, you're not going to be live right away. That just brings you to the setup page for your live feed. Okay, so go ahead and click on the live and go to the next screen where it will give you some more options about what you want your live feed to be like. And there's a confirmation at the end, like go live for sure. That will be hopefully obvious once you see it. So in this next screen where you're setting up the live feed, there are several options. One is the privacy, and I'm sure that's going to be important for many people. So again, here is the option of that lets you decide who you want to share with, whom you want to share with. That was an for me for being a grammar nerd, not that people should still be using whom. So here you will have several options. And so you can choose, again, the just me option, or the friends, or the public option, among various others. So again, we've been making these public because, well, not just because they're interesting historically, I think, but because that the friends of the person who's first might want to hear the whole thing with their friend's voice in it. And if yours is set to just friends, they don't have the option to do that. So that is kind of a nice reason to prompt you to make yours public if you feel comfortable doing so. And that way it can also be posted on one of the groups potentially that where more people would find enjoyment in it. But again, that is completely up to you and to how you decide you want to conduct this. Okay, so, oh yes, to test the sound quality out, the just me option for privacy is really useful because you and your friend can just do a bunch of little like just me tests, Facebook Live feeds that you just delete immediately if you want to, and just to test out how the sound quality is, because when you are singing, you can hear what it sounds like through your speaker and you can hear your own voice, but you really don't know what the entire mix is like. So doing a short test and then going back and listening to it and then again deleting it if you like can be really helpful in just doing some quick troubleshooting of whether volume needs to go up, whether you need to sing louder, all those kinds of things. So I encourage you to experiment with that as well. Okay. Once the privacy is set, you can also add a little message of introduction. I think there's like a say something about this video part there that you'll find on that page. And so here is a good place to let people know what you're doing if you want. This is the kind of singing I do, or come and join us. This is also a really good place. I highly recommend that you tag the other people in the quartet that you've made up in this part. Because if you wait till the comments later, people might not see it and get a little confused about where to go. So this is a great place to tag the names of the people who you're singing with so that other people can find their feeds and potentially find the more completed or other interesting feeds along with yours. To tag someone, what you do is you start typing their name in that section, and hopefully Facebook will pop up a tiny window underneath the name that you're typing, with your friend's full profile name and their picture, so you know it's that right person, and you click on that they have offered you, and it will show up then in your little blurb that you're writing as, I think, a blue highlighted version of their name, and it will look like their full name that they have listed on Facebook, not a nickname or not just a first name either. So click on that little suggestion, and that will then tag the people. And what that means actually is that it's provided a link for people who just want to click on that name, and it will take them immediately over to their profile where they will be able to find that person's feed, rather than having to type in the search bar for the person's name and filter through various people who have the same name, etc. Okay, last little thing I think about the setup is that there are options for special effects on live, just like there are on many other video platforms. I have experienced watching people who have used the effects and people who haven't, and I will tell you, for this particular reason, it is much more difficult to watch somebody who has some kind of effect on them. So just keep that in mind, because even though we are apart, the person watching you will be picking up on a lot of visual cues from you, and I'll explain how to set that up in a good way too. So keep in mind that your visual presentation is also communicating a lot about the music and can help the group stay together. So you can keep that in mind when you're setting up kind of where your camera is as well. So again, you can see your face and the hand that is keeping time, and have it not be distorted, or with, I don't know, bunny ears might be okay, but I don't know. Okay, so that's the basic setup for person number one, because that's all they're doing, is they're setting up that live feed, and they're pressing go or go live or whatever that button says. And then they're just starting to sing. That's their process. They don't have to do the whole other part of the process. They got plenty else to do though. So yes, make sure your device is stable, I would say. Again, of course, you could do this walking around the house if you wanted. You can do it in many different ways. But all of these ideas are to hopefully get the cleanest and most helpful result for everybody involved. Not to say this is how you have to do it. So make sure your device is stable and in a place where it can see, again, both your face and your hands. And when you're ready, just go ahead and press the button, and number one person, you're then live and you're ready to go. Actually, you can decide to either start singing then, just go ahead and, your other folks might be already on, or you can decide to just give it a few minutes and wait for all four people to kind of be up and running. That's why there's often just a little bit of a wait time before you really get to the juicy music in the videos we've done so far. So you use your judgment in that. It can work well both ways, I think. Okay. Persons number 2, 3, and 4. Your setup does have a lot in common with person number 1, okay? The same steps about beginning Facebook Live, about adjusting privacy controls and adding messages and hyperlinks to your feed, all of those are exactly the same as what I just went over, okay? The big difference is that you will be having a second device that's receiving the information or the audio and visual that you need to base yours off of. Okay, so the one that you're setting up that is recording you, exactly the same as number 1. The device that you're using to hear and see the other people, on that one, it's pretty simple. All you need to do is to go to their profile page and wait till they go live and refresh a bunch of times maybe, and then when they're live, press play, And there you go, you've got audio and visual, hopefully, if it all works out. There are plenty of times where there are little skips or misconnections and all sorts of things like that. And in that case, it's often best to just stop watching them, maybe close Facebook and just start it again. And that often clears up a lot of those issues. So once you've got that person that you're watching on your device, I do encourage you to see what it sounds like on a speaker. My setup is that I have a speaker very close to the device that is broadcasting me. It's like pointed right at it and blasting all of their sound, which then matches the volume of my voice. So you can try that. You could have your device kind of right up against your other device. Play with it to see what sound works for you. You do not need a speaker to make this work. Plenty of people have done it without that. That's just what I have found to be a good result. Okay, let's see. Oh, I have a note that might be a little bit behind. Oh yes, no, it's helpful. I found it helpful to have the device that I am receiving the audio and visual on, kind of like right up against the device that I am broadcasting on, or to the side, or somewhere where it's in my view of vision, somewhere where it's in my view. And that again helps with the nonverbal, all the nonverbal communication that is put into making our voices come together and come together in harmony. So that's a note that has helped for me. I've seen some people put it behind them so it can look like we're singing together to the audience member there. But I found that I lose a lot of ability to stay connected with the person in front of me in line that way. Okay. Okay. The option for more devices. You can just stop there. That's enough devices to make it work. I happen to have a third device, and what I've found to be really enjoyable is to go and find the live stream of the person that's after me. And you can't play that with noise because there is a slight lag and they won't be at the same time. But you can play it silently and just see the person there singing with you. And I found that just to be quite a lovely experience. So that's just a little option too, but you don't have to have that. Be aware that the further down the line you are, the more important it becomes to pay attention to the balance of voices. I guess that's debatable, but it is important. The more maybe degradation there is in the voices, is that the right word? The more decline in quality there is of the voices. So it can definitely help always to have your viewers comment on what the balance of voices sounds like, and whether their voices need to be higher or you need to sing louder or whatever it is. Okay. So if each person follows these steps, there should be some amount of success. There are, of course, many details that we've found out just through these trials and errors and elaborate trials, and that will help avoid many a headache, let me say, that we have experienced over the last week, because it hasn't been, there's been a lot of work that we've put into this and making it, figuring out how to make it somewhat successful. So I'm going to start a big section that is about tips to make it work well, okay? I do encourage you to stay for this or come back later and play through these, because these can relieve an enormous amount of stress, hopefully, that you might experience if you're trying to just figure out all these things on your own. Again, we've been working quite hard at this, so stick around. Okay. So there are going to be some simple tips, really simple tips in this section that can help reduce stress and help make this work with as little stress as possible. And there will be some more subtle tips and more tips that are directed mostly at sacred harp singers or the style that we're trying to sing. But much of it will apply to musicians who are trying to do this as well, other musicians. So that being said, yeah, the process of figuring out has taken a significant amount of both mental and physical energy from all involved. And I definitely, my biggest first recommendation would be to harness as much patience and forgiveness and goodwill as you have for everybody involved, because once you get going, you know, the stress levels do rise a little bit, and there's a little bit of nerves, and everybody's trying to figure it out, and everybody has different methods of communicating. So just keeping yourself keeping an even keel for yourself can go a long way, and that is not necessarily any small or easy task, I realize. Yes. And the first times they're gonna be a little weird. Just be ready for that. Everyone's devices and setups and rooms and voices are all different. So even though I'm giving you all these tips, be prepared for a little troubleshooting of your own. And I think that once I've given you all the technical tips, then the troubleshooting on your own will be much easier and clearer to you as you move forward. Okay. Yes. Oh, I have written down deep breaths, plenty of water, and endless patience. Okay. So another kind of internal issue that you may come up against, or you may not, but is I want to mention it, is just the idea of being live. You know, not everybody wants to be a performer or has any experience in that, and it can present itself maybe a little bit like you're performing, but again, I'll tell you that just the joy and the experience of being in it really washed away a lot of that for me. But a lot of people that I've spoken to about this have echoed kind of the same fears or worries that I've had about it, and still some have a little bit. You know, like, what if I mess up, or everyone's watching me, or what if I make others mess up, or, you know, I've never done it before, those kinds of things that you might have in your personal dialogue. I had every one of those thoughts myself along the way, and I had never live streamed on my own before last week, so this is something that can be done as a complete novice. I'm not claiming no technical or technological savvy. I understand that I am of a generation that was, I don't know if I want to use the word lucky, but it does come easier it does come easier, I think, to people who had it around growing up to some extent. So again, yeah, I'm not claiming that it's going to be super easy, but that it's not impossible if you've never done it before even. So yes, last Thursday, my dear friend Emily saw my other friends, Peter Stenchel and David Olson. They are in the same household, and they just decided to live stream themselves singing some songs together. And Emily saw that, and she said, oh, why don't I just stream myself singing along to them? It's almost like singing with them. And there it was. That was the idea right there. So Emily thought to start playing their live stream and make one of her own. And then shortly after she started, and then I think Allison Fisher started to do the same, but using Emily's feed. So they're already, within a very short amount of time, we just kind of made it happen. And in the moment, I really just wanted to sing with people, to sing with the people that I knew and the voices that I knew and that I missed so much. And I kind of, how I did it is I just forced myself past it, past those anxieties, and I just did it. So that's not to say that those anxieties or nerves just went away, but yeah, I found such joy at singing again that it just didn't matter as much. And then once you've done it once, it's a lot easier to do it the second time. So I encourage you, I urge you to, if you feel comfortable, or if you feel so inspired, rather, push through some of those worries and just see what it's like. It may end up kind of not being only worth it, but really bringing you a lot of joy, hopefully as much joy as it's brought me and the people I've been singing with. So, again, the other big part of this is, or not again, but one of the big parts of this is that I promise you the mistakes that you might make on your own live feed are not as important to the group as you think they are. When I make mistakes, I feel like everybody in the entire group has just been thrown off and I ruined everything. But I promise you, when I go back and I listen to the other people's streams, they really, I mean, I'm sure somebody who's more acquainted with everything and has a finer ear than I might pick them out and see trouble in them, but really it doesn't come through. What you hear is harmony, and what you see is people who are happy to be singing together. And chances are, at least in my experience, if someone is watching that far in, and they're hearing mistakes, they're watching that carefully, chances are they're either a fellow Sacred Harp singer who is probably singing at the top of their lungs at home and therefore really not listening to whether you are making a mistake in your part, but rather just enjoying being able to sing with you. Or hopefully they're friends or family of you who know you well enough to support you, mistakes and all. So those are my two little ways of understanding that whole concept of what if I make a mistake. And truly, as I've gone back and listened to them, they are just not as obvious as they are in the moment to you singing. Because when you're singing, you are alone in your home. You know, things seem a little bigger than they might if you were just around a lot of people. So, yes. And again, also singing or seeing the joy that has brought out throughout the country, really, and reaching around the world even already in this last week. It really does a lot to quell, at least for me, the internal negative dialogue that was there. And I still see people commenting days later on certain videos that they're playing it and they're singing along and they're happy to have the video to sing along to. I think often the videos that are posted out there are of big conventions. I mean, those are cool. Those are fun videos to watch with 100 people or so, and the sound is amazing, and there's just such energy there. But that is not the day, that's not the weekly or monthly experience of many Sacred Harp singers. Many singers come together in much smaller groups. And that is kind of their core community. And I have I wonder if these videos that we're doing now may seem even a little more real than those convention videos, because it's almost just like you're singing with your little group again, and it's not a big thing that you prepare for and you travel for and you go to. It's just, here we are, we're singing together again. So seeing that kind of light up people around the world has, and seeing them finding comfort and relief from those videos has done a lot to overpower any negativity for me around it. We all miss singing, and I really truly believe that it's important to keep singing and music alive throughout this time, almost more important than during our usual routines. Okay, those are the internal tips that I found helpful. Now to the nitty-gritty tips of actually making it sound better, making it work better. So I have a bunch of tips for the first person in line. If you find this interesting, if you're preparing to be a first person in line or think you might like to, definitely listen to this. If you think it's going to be interesting to know what that first person is going through, actually, I highly recommend that all people involved listen to this part, because there's a lot of intricacy that goes into being the first person in the stream. And again, it is really quite fun too. So, first person, you are the pitcher. You determine the pitch of all the songs. Nobody else is there to give you relief. So it's important to be somewhat comfortable in that role. And again, I'm using the word somewhat comfortable. I feel somewhat comfortable as a pitcher. I've never done it at a convention, but I feel pretty confident, and I make mistakes and I have to shift the pitch every now and then, but that's probably nothing new for any of us. So, so just know that you're going to be filling that role. Oh, this is something I completely forgot to put down in my notes, but is very related to the next comment. I'll hold that for just one sec. So it's pretty important, as well as the first person, that you have a good sense of holding what your pitch is throughout the length of the song. This can be really tough because, again, you are the only voice that you are hearing, and so there's nothing to balance it against. There's no way to come back to harmony if you've lost it a little bit. And what I really like about that is that it underscores how important we support each other throughout the sings, not just community-wise, but really vocally, and to create what we do. It's not just individual singers. So the go round of that is that if you have a household that has two singers in it, that can be a prime candidate for somebody starting this, because you can work off of one another then. Maybe you have two parts even. Maybe you can give relief to one another pitching, or choosing the songs or things like that. So if you have two singers in your household, or even more potentially, that could be a great base for starting one of these. Let's see. Okay, so yeah, it's not the end of the world if the pitch drops a little bit, right? But it can be kind of destabilizing for the group at large if the entire thing shifts too much, because the people down the line are doing a lot of work to stay with the first person too. So first person, you are also in charge of the tempo, of the pace of the piece, and leading each song too. So the biggest thing that can help with this, I really think, is being able to keep a consistent and visible beating of the time. So in Sacred Harp, we communicate, there's no conductor, but we communicate by beating a 2/4 time or a 3/4 time, or even a 4/4 time too, as well. And so those visible hand symbols during our normal sings, that's what keeps us together a lot of the time. There's a lot of nonverbal communication. So if, as the first person, you can keep that a visible beating of the time consistent, that will go a long way. This is especially important in fugues, because if you are the first person in line of the stream, you're not necessarily the first fugue entrance, right? So you may have 2, 4, more or less measures of rest that you need to just count out in your head without hearing any of the other entrances. So that can be a very interesting challenge. And the best way that I have found to deal with it is just keep that really steady beat going. Keep it internally, keep it externally with your hand, and that will keep you there, hopefully. And it will also let the others know that if you're slightly off with their beating, they can adjust a little bit. And if you come in a little bit late or a little bit early for your fugue entrance, that happens all the time, and the others just slightly subtly readjust. They realize it. We all know what it sounds like to be together, and we all know how to adjust a little bit to get back on track. So it's not the end of the world, really. Okay. Another thing that can help keep the group together is, this one's a little more subtle, is a more pronounced pulsating of the voice on the beats. especially on long held notes, especially on long held notes at the beginning. Because if you're the fourth person in line and you're just hearing a whole note being held, you really have no idea of the tempo of getting started. So that subtle pulsating of the voice on the beats, I know that's a pretty stylistic choice as well, or just learned vocal style, but if you feel like you know how to emphasize that a little bit, I have found that to be almost one of the most helpful things, to be able to stay with the leader on those kind of longer, slow notes, slow songs. Yeah. Okay, leader, take your time. That's a big one. So take your time, but don't fill it with noise all the time. It's hard to remember as the leader because, again, you're just doing it on your own, kind of. It's hard to remember as the leader that you have 3 people plus all their viewers who are trying to follow you, and they're trying to make sure their devices are working. They're trying to get feedback from their commenters about the balance. They're trying to get the right page. They're trying to communicate with the group and maybe old friends or family who pop up and they see watching and they want to say hi to real quick. Because again, this whole thing has been just a really lovely way to connect, with people right now. So as the leader, if you move right on to the next song, just calling the number kind of as we would in the group, that leaves a lot of your followers kind of scrambling and feeling really unsteady at the very beginning of the song, which then could lead to kind of a less successful singing of it. So if you can just give 5 or 10 minutes of silence after the song when it's done, that gives everybody just a little bit of chance to breathe and say anything they might need to say to their commenters. And you have to remember as the leader that the second person is always hearing your voice. So if you're talking all through the breaks, they don't have a chance to talk. And as the third person is hearing all of those voices. So the first person's trying to talk during the breaks, the second person's talking a little bit during the breaks, the third person has even less of a chance to communicate with the people they're trying to, and so on for the fourth person. So that little bit of breathing space can be really helpful and can really help the group achieve a lower level of stress in general. Okay, this is not to say that you shouldn't communicate yourself with the people who are watching you and with the rest of us. It's just as important for you as the leader to be able to talk with the people that you are singing with and you are seeing up in your comments than it is for us. But again, just that little pause can help. Okay, I think I covered that. Good. Okay. And yes, so definitely communicate, because as the leader and people down the line, because one of the most charming parts of this whole process that I have found is actually after it's all done, next day or whenever, going back and watching somebody else's feed of the experience that you had from your feed. So if you watch somebody down the line, what you often end up hearing is people responding to comments that you're making and joining kind of in conversation with you, even though you couldn't hear it in the moment. And that is it's a really sweet experience to hear what they're saying back to you, even though they know that you can't hear them. Often I'll say something out loud because it makes sense in the conversation to somebody who mentioned something before me, and then I might type it out as a comment as well if it's important to convey to them. So I know there are all sorts of different social norms around talking in between the songs, but I just want to put it out there that this is a slightly different experience, and And I think the connection that is made during those little tiny breaks is worth a little bit of chatter. But that is a personal opinion. I totally acknowledge. Yeah, so for me, those have actually been some of the moments, some of the most beautiful moments that really bring out and showcase our humanity and our connection that we're finding through this. Okay, a section titled "The Pitch, the Page, and the Chord," and I really want somebody to like write a novella titled that, maybe. The Pitch, the Page, and the Chord. Okay, I'm such a dork. Sound the pitch clearly as usual. Of course, leader. Thank you for doing that. And slow it down a little bit. That can be really helpful. Slow it down once you've got the arpeggio in your voice. Sound them nice and even and slow, and that really gives the group to tune. Hopefully as well as we would be able to in real life, but it's much harder to, well, not much harder actually, it's harder to tune during this. So that little bit of extra time on the arpeggio can help people find their note and sound it themselves in a kind of more disconnected setting than is usual. Okay, the page is very easy down the line, if you're down the line, to miss the page number or forget it or lose it somehow. So if you as a leader can repeat it several times, kind of at different intervals, that can really save a lot of people. Some people have taken to posting it in the comments, which is also really helpful. When I led, I meant to do that, and then I totally got caught up in all the intricacies of leading, and so I didn't end up doing that. But it was easier for me to remember to announce it several times. Let's see. Especially kind of as we're just getting ready to start. And especially right before sounding the chord, you never know when somebody is just tuning in and wanting to sing with you, but you're sounding the chord and you don't know the page number. So just before you sound the chord or just after, if you can slip it in, even maybe after the shapes, if you feel like that can be a relief to people who are scrambling out there to figure out the page number. Okay, and sounding the chord, again, for the tuning, it can really help to just lengthen the sounding of the chord just a touch so that you can really find your way to being in tune with the people that you are singing with remotely. Okay, so since the first person in line is holding so much together, all those different parts we just talked about, it is really helpful, or I found it really helpful, to offer requests of songs. You as participants can do this, your commenters can do this. The only people who can't do this are people who are watching it after it's already finished, right? Because it's not live anymore. And it's in keeping with the tradition, right? To be able to offer your own choice of song. You can't lead it quite the way you'd like to, perhaps, but you can type in a quick comment, and the next song or the next one after that will be your song, and you'll get to sing it along, which is another nice connecting piece of this. I will say, though, that if the leader feels uncomfortable with your request, please be understanding. It's much different to do kind of tricky, unknown songs when you're the only person who can hear yourself singing. And I know there are songs in that book that I don't know yet, and sometimes that's okay if they look, clear meter and it's pretty simple and it's not a fugue or something like that, then sure. But if whatever the leader says, and leaders feel, I want to empower you to say that as well. Because it's just a very different experience, and something that you might have been able to sight sing for the first time with a group of people very well can be very different on your own. I'm just putting that out there. And you're in charge of keeping the entire piece going too at the right tempo. So if you're working really hard on your notes and the tempo's taking a back seat, then that can be tricky for the rest of the singers. So use your judgment there, of course. And yeah, every individual group can and will figure out the best method of getting requests to the leader, whether through comments, private messages, or group messages, or texts. Okay, tips for singers down the line. So, be nice. And be aware that you're being seen. And I'm saying this completely from personal experience. So this is a wonderful part of the experience. I really believe that being heard and seen while hearing and seeing others around you, like I said, is part of the Sacred Harp experience. And it's meaningful and it joins us as a whole. So what happened with me is that when I was doing my first sing, I was like making all sorts of facial contortions because of how the audio was working or something. I knock stuff over all the time. So like I knock stuff over and I'll make a weird face. And then when I looked at it later, I realized that it just looked like I was reacting to the people around me, and I really wasn't. Or maybe my excitement of like wanting to do it so much came out sounding a little bit more like frustration, and that wasn't my intention either. So that's the total personal note on being mindful that your reactions to the difficulties that you might be having with audio or things like that. Just to make sure that you're aware that they're about that and not about the people around you, of course. Yes, so more of a personal note, but it's something that I learned, so I'm passing it on like everything else in here. Okay. General tips. This is for everybody now. This is not just people down the line. Make sure your phone isn't going to be receiving a lot of messages or phone calls or notifications or anything like that, because that can really get in the way. So turn your phone to silent, turn the notifications off. Even vibrating does not work. That comes through really loud, and actually maybe even louder than a ringer because it's shaking the whole thing. So anything you can do to make sure that your phone is not receiving those things, even though you do want to still see comments and potentially texts, so that it's not making any noise or noise during that. So in general, common sense, do everything you can to minimize the amount of noise around you. The TV in the background is not going to help anybody. Yes, that's a good general tip. Okay, we're almost there. Song choice. It's very helpful to choose several slower or more moderately paced songs at the beginning of these. Just like we're careful not to choose an anthem as the first song to start a convention, be mindful that this kind of group really, it can really benefit from extended time to find the tuning and gel together as a group. So those kind of steady, slow songs where parts aren't on their own and it's just moving through 4-part harmony, those can be really, really beneficial to the group, I've found. And it can also be quite destabilizing to be asked to kind of tackle, even a fugue that really well. Can be tricky at the beginning because it's a brand new experience and you're not necessarily hearing the parts that would lead you in usually, or having the harmonies underneath you supporting you. So just be aware of that. And just, I guess, a note that's slightly misplaced, but about communication with the leader and sending in song requests and deciding which songs to sing. There is a slight lag in all of this. The beauty of it is that the lag does not show in the audio or final product, the final person's feed, but that the audio is all coming through as if it is 100% exactly at the same time. And it is very close to exactly at the same time. So that's why it captures that feeling of singing together. But there is a slight lag. We're guessing between 5 and 10 seconds between each person. So that can add up to, half a minute or so, or more maybe depending on internet connections, between the first person singing and the last person singing. That means if the first person wants to know something right now from the last person, they don't have that option. They just have to wait a little bit, ask a question, they can ask it vocally, right? And this person can respond, but the response is going to come in quite a bit later than the person asked. Or if the last person is experiencing the break, they're in the break and they want to request a song and they request it, that first person is probably already singing. So they're not going to get that until after the song, or maybe when they stop after the shapes or something like that. So just be aware that there is that little discrepancy, and you will experience that pretty quickly once you're in there. It's not really off-putting. I didn't find it off-putting, and it certainly didn't affect the audio or my singing at all. It was just something I kept having to remember a little bit, like, oh yeah. And depending on where you are, it will be more and less. When you're second in line, you can communicate pretty darn quickly with the first person. So just be aware of all that. Okay, yourself. I have a section titled Yourself. Be kind to yourself too. You probably won't be singing with the exact quality or accuracy as usual. Might be totally accurate, but maybe a different quality. It might be the same quality, but accuracy is kind of off. It's harder to start. It's often harder to start a song together because you really don't. The visual cues are, again, the kind of game of telephone. They're translated down. So what happens often in my experience is that the song gets started and I might be just a couple notes behind and then have to catch up a little bit, which is not usual for me when I'm singing with people. So just be aware of that. And again, you won't have the same kind of harmonic structure underlying the notes that you're singing necessarily, unless you're the last person in line. So you might not be able to kind of like find the same notes that you're just really used to finding, because all that harmonic structure is underneath you, and surrounding the notes that you are and supporting the notes that you are singing. So I just wanted to mention that, prepare yourself to not be perfect, maybe not be quite where you thought you'd be vocally, and remember that we're all experiencing the same thing. And actually, I have come to really appreciate certain parts and certain harmonies and interaction between voices, depending on where I am in the line, far more than I ever have in the time that I've been doing this, which is not super long, but that's just an interesting thing that I've noticed, that if you're just singing with one part, you really hear what it sounds like with those two parts interacting, and for me it's helped me understand the music in a deeper sense. Okay, so visual and mental stimulation. This for me, and I know for others, has been a significantly draining experience, I will say. At the same time as being a completely joyful experience, and one that we continue to keep choosing, sometimes even as often as twice a day. But I just want you to remember, or if you need this reminder, if you feel like this is good for you, remember that you are looking at and being surrounded by screens, and that might not be your norm. And like I said, I found it sweet to have even as many as 3 screens, and that is so not what I would ever have thought I would like or want in my life. But potentially because of that, and also because, at least for me, Sacred Harp is somewhat of an intellectual pursuit, that your mind is very active often, that I have found that I'm both more stimulated and more drained at the end of these sessions, after being in the chain. And so that's, again, my personal experience. I know that I'm sensitive to those kinds of things. So if you also know that about yourself, just be aware that that's something to look out for, and kind of gauge your participation once you've experienced that. Okay. That is about all I had to offer. I knew it would take long, but I didn't know it would take quite that long. I think I had something like 20 pages of notes. My closing, I guess, remember that, we've just been a few people playing around with us, 10, 15, not even 15 people, I don't think. Well, that's not including all the viewers, actually. In terms of who's participating in the feeds so far and trying to troubleshoot it, probably 10 people. And really, you know, kind of 4 that have really, or I don't know, it doesn't matter who and how. But it's a small group and we just started. So the takeaway is that I really hope that by putting this out there, the idea will multiply and improve, and you know, the other genius musicians will really figure out how to work it out. So keep experimenting. You know, that's all we've done, is we've just been experimenting this whole time and having fun and finding new things out about ourselves and about how the groups work together and how the technology helps and it hinders at the same time. So find better solutions, please, than we have. I would love that. So someone is already experimenting with like split screen on her computer, if you know what that means. And so that looks like it might be a possibility for people who don't necessarily have 2 devices. And everything is still changing. So I really hope that this is just the seed, that these are the seeds that will sprout into something far better, with, again, all those brilliant minds that are all over the world. Musicians are a powerful and important part of civilization, I believe. And this is not the time to be giving up on coming together and making music and being with one another. So let me know if you have questions that I haven't answered yet. Again, I do plan to type all this up as a document that can then be shared, not just as a Facebook post. So I will find a way to kind of attach that to this or send it out on its own. And thank you for having the patience to kind of work this out. Those of you who are really interested, I understand that this is something that some people find super fascinating and want to put energy into, and others it just is not. It's not their thing, and there are many other roles. You know, we all have our various roles to help with what we're getting through right now. So hopefully this will inspire further progress in this area. Thank you so much for watching.